This review will cover irregular conjugations under the present, imperfect, preterite, future, and conditional. First off, irregular conjugations under the present tense. We start off with stem change verbs. In the present tense, stem changes do not apply to the nosotros or vosotros conjugations. The E to IE stem change using cerrar as an example. Cierro, cierras, cierra, cerramos, cerráis, cierran. These are also E to IE stem change verbs, and they follow the same conjugational pattern in the present tense as cerrar. The E to I stem change using pedir as an example. Pido, pides, pide, pedimos, pedís, piden. These verbs also undergo an E to I stem change. In addition to the E to I stem change, all present tense conjugations of reírse and sonreír require an accent over the I. Me río, te ríes, se ríe, nos reímos, os reís, se ríen. The I to IE stem change only applies to two verbs, adquirir and inquirir. Adquiero, adquieres, adquiere, adquirimos, adquirís, adquieren. Inquiero, inquieres, inquiere, inquirimos, inquirís, inquieren. The O to UE stem change using aprobar as an example. Apruebo, apruebas, aprueba, aprobamos, aprobáis, aprueban. These verbs also undergo an O to UE stem change. The verb oler adds an H prior to the O to UE stem change, but again, this does not apply to nosotros or vosotros. Huelo, hueles, huele, olemos, oléis, huelen. The U to UE stem change only applies to jugar. Juego, juegas, juega, jugamos, jugáis, juegan. Next are spell change verbs, starting off with verbs ending in her and hir. These verbs end in ho, jo, in the first person singular form, but the other forms remain regular. Now the verbs corregir and elegir, they are also E to I stem change verbs, and they also include this stem change in their irregular yo form. Verbs that end in gir end in go in the first person singular form, and they remove the u in addition to the ir infinitive ending, but the other forms remain regular. As for verbs based on seguir, they also undergo an E to I stem change, and this also applies to the irregular yo form. For verbs that end in ser and sir, if the letter preceding the ending is a consonant, then the C will change to a Z in the first person singular form, but the other forms remain regular. If the letter preceding the ending is a vowel, then a Z is added prior to the C in the first person singular form, but the other forms remain regular. The verbs coser, torcer, and retorcer are O to UE stem change verbs, and this also applies to their irregular yo form. We have what are colloquially referred to as the go verbs because they end in go or igo in the first person singular form. For verbs ending in uir, the unstressed I will change to a Y in between vowels, so this applies to all forms except nosotros and vosotros. For destruir we have destruyo, destruyes, destruye, destruimos, destruís, destruyen. and these are also weird verbs, which follow the same pattern. The verb oír follows the same pattern as weird verbs, but with its own irregular yaw form. Oigo, oíes, oye, oímos, oís, oyen. There are a few verbs which have their own types of uniquely irregular present tense yaw forms, but they remain regular in all other forms. Caber, quepo. Dar, doy. Saber, sé. Ver, veo. Delinquir, delinco. Truly irregular verbs under the present tense, starting off with estar. Estoy, estás, está, estamos, estáis, están. Estar is only considered irregular in the second and third person singular and third person plural forms because of the addition of the accent. Ser, soy, eres, es, somos, sois, son. Haber, has, ha, hemos, habéis, han. And the third person singular form of haber is conjugated as I, if it is used to mean there is or there are. Ir, voy, vas, va, vamos, vais, van. Some verbs have multiple irregularities in the present tense, including those with both a stem change and a separate irregular yaw form. So the verbs tener and venir. They are I stem change verbs, but their stem change does not apply to their irregular yaw form. Some verbs do include their stem change in their separate irregular yaw form. We saw that oler adds an H prior to the O to U E stem change. Huelo, hueles, huele, olemos, oleis, huelen. And oír follows the same pattern as weird verbs, but with its own irregular yaw form. Oigo, oíes, oye, oímos, oís, oyen. The irregular conjugations under the imperfect. Luckily, there are only 3 main verbs with irregular imperfect conjugations. The imperfect conjugations for ir: iba, ibas, iba, ibamos, ibais, iban. Ser: era, eras, era, éramos, erais, eran. Ver: veía, veías, veía, veíamos, veíais, veían. Prever follows the same pattern of conjugations as ver, just with the prefix pre attached. Preveía, preveías, preveía, preveíamos, preveíais, preveían. The irregular conjugations under the preterite. IR verbs that have a stem change in the present tense also have stem changes in the preterite, but their preterite stem change only applies to the third person, singular and plural forms. So these stem changing IR verbs in the preterite will either undergo an E to I stem change or O to U stem change in the third person preterite conjugations. So for sentir we have sentí, sentiste, sintió, sentimos, sentisteis, sintieron. For morir we have morí, moriste, murió, morimos, moristeis, murieron. These are some more E to I preterite stem change verbs. Dormir and morir are the only commonly used O to U preterite stem change verbs. And keep in mind that AR and ER verbs with present tense stem changes do not abide by these preterite stem change rules. Verbs that end in ducir, as well as decir and traer, will take a J in all preterite forms. These verbs also have irregular preterite endings for certain forms. In the first person singular preterite form, they end in e. In the third person singular, they end in o. And in the third person plural, they end in eron. For traducir, we have traduje, tradujiste, tradujo, tradujimos, tradujisteis, tradujeron. For decir, we have dije, dijiste, dijo, dijimos, dijisteis, dijeron. And notice that decir also has an E to I stem change, which applies to all forms. These are the preterite stems for various J stem verbs. The verbs tener, estar, and andar undergo UV stem changes in all preterite forms. Their first person singular form ends in e, and their third person singular form ends in o. Tuve, tuviste, tuvo, tuvimos, tuvisteis, tuvieron. Estuve, estuviste, estuvo, estuvimos, estuvisteis, estuvieron. Anduve, anduviste, anduvo, anduvimos, anduvisteis, anduvieron. The verbs haber, poder, poner, caber, and saber undergo U stem changes in all preterite forms. Again, their first person singular form ends in e, and their third person singular form ends in o. Hube, hubiste, hubo, hubimos, hubisteis, hubieron. Pude, pudiste, pudo, pudimos, pudisteis, pudieron. Poner, caber, and saber also undergo spell changes of their own in the preterite. Puse, pusiste, puso, pusimos, pusisteis, pusieron. Cupe, cupiste, cupo, cupimos, cupisteis, cupieron. Supe, supiste, supo, supimos, supisteis, supieron. Venir, querer, hacer, and satisfacer undergo I stem changes in all preterite forms. They also end in e in their first person singular form and o in their third person singular form. Vine, viniste, vino, vinimos, vinisteis, vinieron. Querer, hacer, and satisfacer also undergo their own spell changes in the preterite. Quise, quisiste, quiso, quisimos, quisisteis, quisieron. Hice, hiciste, hizo, hicimos, hicisteis, hicieron. Satisfice, satisficiste, satisfizo, satisficimos, satisficisteis, satisficieron. The easiest thing would probably be to simply memorize the irregular preterite stems for these U, V, U, and I preterite stem change verbs, and then you can add the preterite endings afterwards. When memorizing these stems, keep in mind that hacer and satisfacer undergo a C to Z spell change in the third person singular form, and that all of these preterite U, V, U, and I stem change verbs end in e and o for the first and third person singular forms. Verbs that end in gar, and zar have preterite spell changes that only apply to the first person singular form. Preterite spell changes for gar verbs. Preterite spell changes for gar verbs. And preterite spell changes for zar verbs. Some verbs undergo a Y spell change in the preterite, but this only applies to the third person singular and plural forms. For leer we have leí, leíste, leyó, leímos, leísteis, leyeron. For oír we have oí, oíste, oyó, oímos, oísteis, oyeron. These are some of the verbs that undergo a Y spell change in the third person singular and plural forms. And keep in mind that verbs based on seguir have an E to I preterite stem change. They do not undergo a preterite Y spell change. As for distinguir and extinguir, they have regular preterite conjugations in all forms. For verbs that end in enir or yir, they end in o and eron for the third person singular and plural forms respectively. For gruñir we have gruñí, gruñiste, gruñó, gruñimos, gruñisteis, gruñeron. For bullir we have bullí, bulliste, bulló, bullimos, bullisteis, bulleron. These are the third person singular and plural conjugations for certain verbs ending in enir and yir. To quickly recap, spell changes for cargar and zar verbs only apply to the first person singular preterite form. E to I and O to U stem changes, and Y and enir and yir preterite spell changes, these all only apply to the third person singular and plural preterite forms. As for the other preterite stem changes, J, UV, U, and I, they apply to all forms. And true irregulars under the preterite. The verbs ser and ir have identical preterite conjugations, despite being two different verbs. Fui, fuiste, fue, fuimos, fuisteis, fueron. Preterite conjugations for dar. Di, diste, dio, dimos, disteis, dieron. Preterite conjugations for ver. Vi, viste, vio, vimos, visteis, vieron. And ver is only considered irregular in the preterite due to the removal of accents in its first and third person singular endings. To wrap up part 1 of this review, we have irregular verbs under the future and conditional. Every verb that is irregular under the future is also irregular under the conditional, and there are 12 of these verbs. These verbs have the same irregular stems for both the future and conditional, and to their irregular stems, you add the regular future or conditional endings afterwards. So for these 12 verbs, the stems are irregular, but the future and conditional endings always remain regular. And these are those 12 verbs, along with their irregular future and conditional stems. You simply take these irregular stems and add the future or conditional endings afterwards. That covers part 1 of the review of irregular conjugations. We will cover the remainder of these irregular conjugations in part 2. As I always say, I would very much appreciate it if you could please do me a favor and share this video series with your friends and teachers. And that is all for now, so until next time.